midlife age for women, what we all hear a lot of challenges of sleep around that age, but then how much we already know, like what do you find in your research so far that is very interesting or surprising to you?
I think we certainly have learned a lot in the work that I've done and the work that others have done to try and understand what's going on. And I think right off, it's quite complicated. Like there's complex interactions in what's going on in a midlife woman's life. So there's several factors that can be impacting their sleep. So there's social or life changes. For example, they may have older children going off to college. That comes with some stress. They may be looking after elderly parents. They also can be at the peak of their careers. So there can be a lot of busyness and some stress and just a lot of things going on in their lives that can influence sleep, because we know that sleep is sensitive to stress and sensitive to sort of anxieties and concerns. So if you're feeling anxious or worrying about something, or just, have got that very overactive mind, especially in the lead up to bed, then it's difficult to fall asleep. And it can happen again later in the night where women can be waking up at 3 a.m. And if they're worrying about things, thinking about a lot of stuff, then it's difficult to go back to sleep. But then where the complexity comes in the midlife women is that you have to consider the other aspects in their physiology, or what's happening in their bodies. So in the approach to menopause, there's these massive hormonal changes going on, because they're finishing up on those reproductive years. So as those hormones change, so you have this decline in your estrogen levels, a big rise in follicle stimulating hormone. And so in that hormonal environment, things start to happen. So one symptom that comes to mind is hot flashes. So women start to have hot flashes, and it's very common. So maybe about 80% of women will have some hot flashes, and then some women will have multiple hot flashes. So every day they'll have many, many hot flashes. And of course, they're happening during sleep as well. And they can be waking them up. And we did see in our research what the way we're studying sleep is we bring women into the sleep lab, and so that we can better understand the physiology, so that we are recording electrical brain activity to better understand sleep. We're also recording hot flashes, using sort of measuring the sweating response, because that's what a hot flash is. We measure heart rate, we measure blood pressure. So we measure a lot of the workings of the body. And from our studies, then we were noticing that when women are having the hot flashes during the night, the hot flash often coincides with them waking up. So they're waking up a lot of the time when they have a hot flash. So more than 60% of the time. And then sometimes when they're waking up, then they're having a harder time going back to sleep. And so we know that in the midlife women, one factor that could be disturbing their sleep are hot flashes. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely one sort of special situation for midlife women that can be disrupting their sleep.
Right. Sounds like a lot of mind, body, environment interactions, right? Yeah, I think I hear a lot of people saying, especially the hot flash, a lot of people focus on the body part, the physiological part, and they feel like there's nothing I could do, and this is horrible. Then from intervention point of view, after we understanding, even though only a little bit of this challenge, is there any guidance to what people can do, what providers can do in this field?
Yeah, you bring up such a good point about the what we focus on, and whether and also knowing that there is this combination of mind and body, and it's sort of all is in this mishmash of what could be disturbing sleep. And while we can identify the hot flashes as being the one factor that could be disrupting the sleep, of course, the next question is, well, what can you do about it? And there's definitely one part that is so important for sleep and for coping with hot flashes as well is sort of the control of what is going on. And I think that's one big issue with midlife women, where they are sort of approaching something that's unknown. They haven't yet gone through menopause. There's a lot that's happening that they're dealing with in their bodies and in their lives. And so part of what goes with that is this lack of uncertainty of, well, when am I going to get a good night's sleep? Is tonight? Am I going to wake up with hot flashes tonight? I need to get a good night's sleep because I have a lot that I have to get done the next day. And you start getting those thought processes that can be very disruptive or, make it even harder to have a good night's sleep. And the good news is that there have been a couple of studies in the last few years where other people have done research looking at how and whether cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is effective at improving sleep in women who have insomnia in the context of menopause. And the good news is that, yes, it does. It does help women. Even when they're having the hot flashes that can be disturbing their sleep, they can still sleep better. Their sleep is improved if they follow cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that really is the gold standard treatment for insomnia. And we can now say it's effective in this group of people too. And it puts, I think, what it partly does is put women back in control of their sleep and know that they can be doing something to improve their sleep and to cope with the sleep disruption that they might be having.
Yeah, that's wonderful to know that there are great treatment out there, and we don't have to focus on things we are not able to control, right? How many hot flash you experience per night, whether you're going to wake up by it or not. But there's other things like stress you mentioned, and like how we think about sleep, how we think about health, how we do stress management. Sounds like there are quite a lot of directions we actually can do to help us empower ourselves.
And I like the way that you say empower ourselves, because I think that's where we want to go, is that there is to provide women with tools, and not every woman is the same. So we also see in our research, for example, even when we look at how the hot flashes are disrupting sleep, we see that in some women, they may have the same number of hot flashes during the night, maybe 5 or 6. But one woman will have a much more disturbed sleep than another woman. Another woman may have the feeling that just a couple of hot flashes that disturb them are make their sleep really poor and difficult to function the next day, whereas another woman might be able to brush it off and think it's okay, I can deal with it. And because we also have to keep in mind that thinking about the menopause, menopause is defined as the time of when a woman has her last period, and it's only can be defined when a woman has gone a whole year without having a period. And that makes it sound like it's just this little discrete time point that, oh, maybe for a year you can sort of go through this transition and then all will be fine. But of course, again, there's individual variability as to how long women take to go through that menopause transition. And also, even when they are post-menopause, those hot flashes and other symptoms can persist. And they can often persist for several years after having her last, after a woman has her last period. So we're talking about a number of years that we want to give women tools to cope with their sleep. So it's not a strategy to say, oh, well, this is soon going to be over and then all will be well. It's no, we want to give women good, strong ways and options of how they can get through that menopause transition and also into the early years of postmenopause. And that's it. I would say that we have to consider each woman as an individual and what might work for her. So some women have extremely severe hot flashes, so severe that they're impacting their nighttime sleep. They're affecting their ability to function properly during the day. And for them, hormone therapy may be an option for those women. And so that's why having conversations with the healthcare provider is so important, and to please bring up sleep. So if someone is having difficulties with their sleep, it would be good to have a conversation about sleep and what we all want to work towards finding a way to improve it and a way to get a better night's sleep so you can do better during the day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so important to help them to set up the correct our more realistic expectations, right? And at the same time, have some skills, some tools, and some hope to know that there's something they are capable of doing, some new strategies possibly can be applied. So it's not just like suffer through this. It's more you can coexist this with this, live with this in a better way, how to make it not impact your life that much.
Exactly. It's about knowing that you're not alone, and that every single woman will go through midlife and go through menopause, and will have some variation of the experience. Some are lucky to have very few symptoms and have an easy transition to menopause, and others will have many more symptoms and have a harder time. But there's always tools that can be used to make it easier. And I'm so happy that over the last few years, we have learned a lot. We've done a lot more research so we can understand more about what's going on. And in turn, through that research, we can then provide more tools for women. But that said, there's still a lot of questions that we have, and a lot of parts that we don't fully understand. And so that's why we still actively continue with our research, so that we can better learn, try and unravel some of these complexities. And for example, like you bring up stress, and I was mentioning stress. We know that stress is such an important trigger for insomnia or sleep problems at any stage of life. And in the context of the midlife women, that can be one factor that interacts with these menopausal symptoms to sort of start a pattern of insomnia. And it's so much easier to address the sleep problems and insomnia symptoms early on than to wait and leave them. They can tend to get worse over time, because it starts sort of perpetuating. And then when you try and treat insomnia, if it's been around for a long time, as it's chronic, you just requires a lot more effort to solve it than if you can sort of nip it quickly.
Yeah, definitely. So we talk a little bit about how women can really think about this differently, how to deal with it on their own. So in your research, have you find out any like family support and, their anything outside of themselves and anyone else can do to help support women going through this menopause and sleep challenges?
So in my research, I haven't really examined that factor. I do know that the women that have been participating in our research, they often put a lot of emphasis on their friendships and the support that comes from other women who are at the same life stage as them. And it's very helpful to have that support from somebody else who's either recently gone through menopause or is in the same phase as you are. I think we can, as women, can get a lot of support from those relationships, but it's not something that I can speak to from a research point of view as to how much of a difference that can make.
Mm-hmm. I think this possibly aligns with what you mentioned, knowing you're not alone, right? By having other women going through similar things, similar challenges, sometimes it does make us feel like, oh, okay, so this is something I can talk about. It's okay. It's common. And that already reduces a lot of stress on our shoulder.
I agree with you. And again, I'll say that not only should we look around at our friends and families for support, because that always helps, but it's important as well to have those conversations with the healthcare provider, and to make sure that they are aware of what's going on and can help find solutions.
Yes, wonderful. So we talk about midlife women's sleep. And then I do want to ask you more about teenagers' sleep. I know that's part of your research area too, because myself, I treat teenagers in my clinic, mostly for mood disorders. But I do notice teenagers overall have their own unique sleep challenges, but I never really distinguish like between female and male, right? Any gender difference. So I'm curious, do you find any gender difference among like teenager, this age group?
Yeah, so we are doing a couple of studies where we are tracking teenagers, and one behavior that we look at is their sleep. And as you know, teenagers, and anyone knows who has a teenager at home, there are massive changes in sleep that teenagers experience, where most typically we talk about the fact that their phase becomes delayed. So that means that they want to go to bed later. And that's like a normal biological factor, that as they become older, then they will tend to go to bed later. Of course, it does become a bit of a challenge when they have to get up to go to school in the mornings. So during weekdays, they are not able to sleep as long as their natural rhythm would want. They have to get up for school. And then you can see this pattern sometimes happening where they will have to get up for school early, but they've gone to bed late. They don't get enough sleep. And then on the weekends, they do a recovery. So sleeping very long into the day, but then Monday morning have to wake up early for school. So you get this sort of seesawing effect that can be difficult for them to handle. And on top of that, then trying to understand, well, first, how do we do better to help our teenagers get more sleep? We sort of have to be mindful of what time they're going to bed and to make sure that they're getting enough sleep. Like, sadly, there's I think majority of teenagers are not getting the 8 to 10 hours of sleep that's recommended. So it does require sort of pushing back that bedtime to get them to bed early enough. When we talk about, are there differences in boys and girls and their sleep, the one factor that comes to mind, and something that our lab is looking at, is insomnia. So starting in those teenage years, sort of after puberty, girls become a lot more likely to suffer from insomnia than boys. So insomnia becomes more common in the female sex starting in the teenage years. And as we know, that is something that continues across the whole lifespan. So women are more likely to suffer from insomnia than men. And they're also more likely to suffer from other disorders like depression, also starting in the teenage years. But even aside from that, insomnia stands out as being something more common in women. We've tried to understand why that is. It's a lot harder to understand why than to pick up that there is a difference. We suspect that there is something different about how women handle stress or react to stress. That could be one factor. There's also always those hormonal changes that start, that sort of kickstart again after puberty, and that could have an impact on sleep regulation. But still a lot of unanswered questions, understanding why there is that gender difference.
Right. Wow. I definitely can feel that. Sometimes I actually think parents are really struggles what they can do to help their teenagers to sleep better. And now you mentioned that, I think back, I do notice sometimes some girls I've been treating, they, on one hand, we do want them to go to bed earlier to get enough sleep, but on the other hand, they just cannot fall asleep for a lot of reasons. And then they stay on the phone. they do a lot of different things. They have ways to stay up late. Then of course, sleep deprived and feel awful during the daytime, and long nap during the day. I see that definitely very common among teenagers.
And you bring up many things in that sort of description that can be difficult for sleep then. So for example, now of course the use of the phone, there's a lot of focus on screen time, and especially pre-sleep, whether turning to the phone and social media or playing video games, whatever it is right before bed, that is not a good thing to do for anybody right before they go to sleep. Anything that is activating, that could be highly interactive with conversations on social media or playing games, then turning that off and then expecting yourself to go to sleep in an instant is is hoping too much for sleep. So the sleep is, I like to think about sleep onset as a process. It's not just a switch. You need to get the body ready for sleep, and that really does involve some downtime. So, and downtime isn't on the phone, chatting with friends or reading social media posts. It really is allowing your whole body to relax and unwind, and to sort of not be thinking about what you have to do tomorrow, and not be thinking about all the things that happened that day. It's trying to distract your mind, and also just relaxing your body. So when being too active before bed, it's just difficult to fall asleep. And then not getting enough sleep at night, sometimes the strategy is to then have a long nap during the day, but having a long nap during the day just makes it much harder to fall asleep the next night. So the better option is most important is to just try and have a regular bedtime, a regular wake up time. And even if you've taken a long time to fall asleep, it will be to resist the temptation to nap the next day, and rather go to bed at an earlier time, so that be tired and then be able to fall asleep. And the second important strategy for sleep is not to lie in bed, for more than 30 minutes, being wide awake and not able to fall asleep. It would be better to get up and then do something relaxing. So something where there's dim light, something that's calming, and then return to the bed when you can feel sleepy.
So I want to help some parents to ask this question, since you talk about nap. It's so important, but I hear a lot of teenagers would go home after school and sleep, right? Crash basically for 3 or 4 hours, and then wake up in the nighttime, start working on their homework. So will that be helpful if parents step in, right? Either not allow them to take nap at all, or take a shorter nap. But they may fight with parents. That's worth the fight.
Wow. Yeah, we know it's the teenagers are one of the more, it's not so easy to figure out what's a simple solution. And you also have the autonomy stepping in, with they have independence and want to make their own choices and decisions, and that's a good thing. We want to encourage that, and at the same time recognize that as parents, that there can be sort of helpful ways to support their teenager. And I think that it really is a better strategy not to be taking a 3 to 4 hour nap in the afternoon, and rather staying awake until 3 a.m. 4 a.m. and then sleeping. That isn't a healthy sleep pattern. It would be better, so if the teenager is exhausted, then having a short nap can just give a little boost. So 20-minute nap, 30-minute nap, enough boost to be able to do the homework. So that would be a better strategy. And then be able to do the homework and allow some downtime, or some time. We know we don't want our teenagers only doing homework and sleep. They need time with friends, but sort of doing some helping teenagers with some time management, and also for all of us, and I'd say this isn't only for teenagers, it's for everybody, to recognize the importance of sleep, the value of sleep, and that it's not a waste of time, that it is actually a better strategy overall to allow sufficient time for sleep, to go to sleep at a reasonable time. And then everybody will feel the benefits. We just can function better during the day and be able to have more energy, better mood, and to do more things in the day.
Right. If we all could prioritize our sleep, right? How wonderful that would be. And if teenagers can realize sleep is important, that would be great. But a lot of times they don't want to buy into that. They feel like they have a lot of energies. They have a lot of things to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's one of my roles, and anyone who is studying sleep or treating sleep disorders or involved in the sleep field is to try and get the message out there that sleep is important. And while in the short term, it may feel that you can live off very little sleep and it's okay, you can manage. Over the long term, sleep is important for so much, for every system in our body, whether it's our mood, whether it's our brain function, cognition, it's our humor, it's whether we do well at sports. Sleep serves a very vital role, and it does need to be fitted in, even with the busiest schedule.
Right. So sometimes it's really our mindset, right, can guide our behaviors, our reactions, what we're going to do. And I do want to ask a little bit more about the electronic usage at night for teenagers. I know a lot of parents are trying to set up a charging station outside of the bedroom. Everyone's phone gonna go there. But it's interesting, I remember I read Dr. Chris Winter's new book. He mentioned his son used to put this cover, like this shell of the phone upside down to the charging station. So for a while, it's really, the parents did not know the real phone was in his room, only a cover was there. So I feel like, teenagers, they either going to fight with you directly, aggressively about that, or they're going to sneak it around, find their own way, not losing their phone.
Yeah, not easy being a parent, and not easy being a teenager either. And I think it's a good strategy if a family can set it up to have everybody's devices out of the bedroom, because it is always tempting for anyone to, check that last message, or they maybe get a notification. So especially disruptive as if they're getting woken up during the night with messages, and then that's waking them up, and then they want to go read the message. Now that's a really bad thing for sleep. But of course, even before bedtime, being tempted to stay awake a little longer, to use their whatever it's they're doing on their phone is very tempting. So having it out of the room would be a good strategy. And it's always easier to put those behaviors in place near the beginning, not to try and make the change when everyone's got used to their phones in their bedroom. I think it's certainly just good to have the conversation with the teenager to try and have a buy-in for those types of behaviors. But definitely from a sleep perspective, you just want to avoid the doing those, just delaying the bedtime so much that you are only getting 5-6 hours of sleep a night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Glad. So parents, right? If any parents are listening, possibly you really should consider that and think about how to negotiate this with their teenagers and find out a way that works for your family. It's like you have to tailor it to your own situation.
That's right. I think it's a family conversation.
Right. Yeah, I like what you mentioned earlier. The guideline for parents is learn how to be there for the teenagers, how to support their needs, and how to support them to be healthier, sleep better. So
yes, I think support is so important, and we've even in the context of the COVID pandemic, we've done a number of studies where we've been examining factors that are important for children and teenagers, and how they've sort of experienced the pandemic in terms of their mood. So in one of the studies, which is the ABCD study, it's a large study funded by NIH. So it's an adolescent behavior and cognitive development study. And what we've looked at with them is in this cohort that we've studied, we've looked to see how their sleep patterns, how their support, family support, how physical activity, various behaviors, how those have helped the teenagers, they're mostly sort of ages 12, 13, 14, how they have felt during the pandemic. So we've looked at their depression, we've looked at also positive mood, and we see some of the factors that come out most strongly as predictors of first of positive mood is strong family support, sort of parental support, also good sleep habits, physical activity. And then when we look at, well, what's predicting some of the negative moods, such as depression, we see that again, some of the sleep factors come out, so poorer sleep habits. Also, we see that girls have been more susceptible to depression symptoms in the context of the pandemic. Anybody who already had a pre-existing some sort of mood problems, they have been more susceptible to depression, and then less support from friends and family has been predictive. So again, it just brings up the importance of multiple factors that are important for our children, even in the context of the pandemic. And I want to say so this is in the ABCD study, which is the Adolescent Brain and Cognitive Development Study.
Oh, great. Wow. I think whoever are listening, if are interested, can go to the resources to read them. And I'm happy to quote that on the show note, and myself want to read that. I don't know whether the study already published or is that already done? Yes,
it is published, so I can share that with you.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I think it's very important for us all to understand, right? Especially over the past 2 years during the pandemic, I think a lot of families and teenagers are struggling. What you just mentioned, I definitely see that in my own clinical observation too, for both parents and the teenagers. But right now, as things start hopefully getting better and better, and hopefully we learned a lesson, and that could guide our life in the future.
I hope so. And it does also bring in the link or the importance of sleep for mood as well, where we did see that, better sleep habits, getting enough sleep, good sleep timing, and not having difficulties with your sleep are predictors of better mood. So it shows again the importance of sleep there.
Well, that's great to know that direction. I know a lot of research are more like association between these two, but you can really see a direction of prediction there.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Of course, it goes both ways, as you would know too.
Yeah.
Where anyone who has depression, often poor sleep or insomnia, difficulty sleeping is a part of that depression or depressive disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's very important for people to know and keep in mind treating your sleep, right? Treating your insomnia, for example, and can help you with your other like mood disorder treatment. So sleep still play a very significant role, and relatively, I would say, easier to improve and manage. A lot of times the treatment is short-term. CBT for insomnia, this treatment is relatively short-term, right? Compared to treatment for depression or anxiety.
Absolutely. I think we do see good research showing the importance of being able to treat the sleep difficulties is an important component of treatment of depression.
Yeah, and I want to double check CBTI, this method works for teenagers as well, right?
It does work for teenagers. I think that there's still room for other options for teenagers. So that's one way that can be effective. I do think that because of, again, it's the unique aspects of the teenager and what they're going through, it would be nice to develop some other options too. And we know how even it's quite difficult to diagnose insomnia in adolescence because of those normal changes that I was talking about, where it's typical for a teenager to go to bed later because of the shifting of their rhythms. And then it can be hard to distinguish the difference between the teenager who's not able to fall asleep because for their body clock is just too early and they can't fall asleep, or is it that they're having trouble falling asleep? So do they have insomnia? And then even because so many teenagers are just not having enough opportunity to sleep because they have to get up early to go to school, then it can be tricky to determine, one of the criteria for diagnosing insomnia is, do you have an adequate opportunity to sleep? And they don't always have an adequate opportunity. And so I think sometimes parents or caregivers may dismiss some sleep problems of teenagers as being, well, this is just part of being a teenager, and don't always pick up that there could actually be an insomnia problem.
Yeah. And possibly also there may be other sleep disorders in the picture as well, like sleep apnea and other things could make the picture even more complicated.
That's right. I think it's always good I'm glad you bring that up, because it's always good to remember that there's other sleep problems. And while they are of low prevalence in the teenagers, they definitely are there. And that's actually another gender difference too, of course, is that sleep apnea is more common in men than in women up until postmenopause. So starting postmenopause, sleep apnea, the prevalence of that does start to increase in women compared to their younger years.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a lot more to explore within the sleep field. I'm very happy you're doing all this wonderful work and especially help us understand more about, across life stage, what sleep look like, and especially what sleep look like among women. I think all those are so important, and to use the research, guide the clinical work, guide the daily life. It's very meaningful.
Thank you. I hope it can help us advance towards like different options, or just giving people more tools to fix any sleep problems that they have, whatever the problem is. And I do think, like we've spoken about in teenagers or midlife women, or whatever group we're looking at, there often are unique situations or factors where we would want to look at female sex versus the male sex, or different genders, and then try and understand the sleep problems and how they are impacted or influenced by the reproductive stage that we're talking about for women, and the different or unique experiences that that the women may be experiencing depending on their age. So as we look at young women, of course, they are more likely to have, just in the context of their reproductive cycle, so the menstrual cycle, a lot of women can have some of menstrual symptoms that can be disturbing their sleep. So maybe about a quarter to a third of women will report that their sleep is disturbed around the time of menstruation each month. So it could be a few days leading up to their period, and then during their period where they're not sleeping as well as other times. And they may also be sleepier during the day. And as with anything, there's the spectrum of how bad that is. So for some women, it's they don't really notice any changes in sleep across their menstrual cycle. Some other women may just have some mild sleep problems, but for a group of women, their sleep disruption, along with their spectrum of other symptoms, whether it's mood symptoms, physical symptoms, can be quite disturbing and impact their quality of life. So definitely another important factor to consider.
Right. So a lot of unique, I think women are facing a lot of unique challenges with their health, their sleep in general. And I'm sure the intervention accordingly gonna be slightly different, but there are also standard protocols out there can still benefit.
I agree. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Baker, for sharing all this wonderful knowledge with us. And feel free to share with me any of your research, your publications and data. I'm happy to post it on the show note for everyone who are listening. They can check it out as well.
Well, thank you so much. It's been it's been great talking with you and highlighting the topic that I love, which is, of course, sleep and sleep health.
Wonderful. Okay.